Hi, my name is April Hobbs, and I am the Adult Services Librarian here at St. Paul's Hollywood Branch. And today I'm going to show you some books and authors that can celebrate Native American Heritage Month. So the first book I'm going to talk about is At the Mountain's Base. It's by Tracy Sorrell. Now, this book is about a family and the daily habits and occurrences in a cabin that lies at the mountain's base under an old hickory tree. It talks of a grandmother who sits in the cabin weaving and cooking, and most importantly, worrying. Her family is also in the cabin, busying themselves with their tasks and chores as well. They're singing, and within that song is a battle of a pilot protecting and defending. The pilot also forms a prayer that is pleading for peace, as the family in the cabin is actually waiting for her return. Now, the reason I like this book is I believe that this story tells of a much larger discussion that needs to be had to highlight the contributions that Native American women have made to our military. Even in the author's note, it tells of how women from Native American and Alaska Native nations have served the country in a lot of wars. Another notable piece in the author's note was the mention of Ola Mildred Millie Rexroad, an Oglala Lakota pilot that served in World War II as the only Native American woman among 1,074 women Air Force service pilots. She also served as an air traffic controller during the Korean War. She received the Congressional Gold Medal in 2009 along with other WASPs. After her death in 2017, Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota was renamed and dedicated a building in her honor. I enjoy reading about the culture and traditions of Native American and other indigenous people. There's a lot to learn about people from other cultures in order for us to learn and grow and be respectful of other people. The type of reader that would most like this book, it is a children's book and will be enjoyed by children who are looking to read more books by indigenous authors or about indigenous characters. It's a quick read and has beautiful artwork by Weshoyo Alvitri. Now, the next book I'll be talking about is Encounter by Brittany Luby. Now, this book, it has a story about a fisher and a sailor and their encounter and interactions. These encounters and interactions are commented upon by the animals and nature around them, commenting that they are both very similar individuals. It's a very friendly seeming encounter, with the fisher and sailor saying their goodbyes after enjoying one another's company on the varied adventures around the island. It is not until the author's note, or the author's reflection, in the historical note at the back of the book that we see the larger context behind this encounter. The author tells of her background and ancestry from the Anishinaabeg tribe. She tells of what is known about Jacques Cartier's arrival, who claimed indigenous territories for France and what is now known as Quebec and other North American territories. The author points out that these settlers were visitors, as this story provides an alternative view of Cartier's visit. The peaceful encounter told in the story does not forgive Cartier for his violent actions. It instead reminds us that violence is a choice. She reminds us that everyday people, like Sailor, can participate in systems that hurt others. Now, I really liked this book. I really thought that this book would tell more of the background of what happened when settlers encountered natives. It provided a friendly encounter between a sailor and a fisher who is native within the story. Even though we are all blind to the original history of North America, this story will show that it is not all rainbows and gold on the surface. Our history is very hurtful for those that came before us, those who originally owned the land. I like this story because I believe it is a wake-up call to those who blindly believe the history of the founding of North America that is told in schools. People need to learn who was on the land first and what happened when those with more advanced technology tried to claim it as their own. Now, the type of reader that would enjoy this book is children, because if children are interested in learning more about the founding and settling of North America, they will enjoy this book, especially if they're open to learning about how it affected indigenous people. It also shows how animals and nature may not view humans in groupings of the color of their skin or what culture they are from. They view us as one and the same. It's an important lesson in today's time. Now, the third book I am going to show you is called Bird Song. Now, this book is about a young girl who moves to a new place far away from the sea, where she feels out of place, but she befriends this elderly woman next door. The story progresses as the seasons change, showing the daily interactions and activities of that little girl and the elderly woman. The elderly woman shares the little girl's love of nature and art, so the artwork shows them working in the yard, the little girl showing the elderly woman her art, and the elderly woman showing the little girl her art as well. While the seasons are changing, we see the little girl coming to terms with the failing health of her new friend. There are several references to Cree names and culture in this story as well. I really like this book as well because I thought it was a cute story of the intergenerational friendship between a young girl and an elderly woman. It even showed the sharing of the little girl's Cree traditions and the elderly woman sharing with the little girl's interests as well. It highlighted some Cree words and phrases that I have not encountered before as well, and that's why I really like this book, because it's teaching me more as an adult too. Now, the type of reader that would enjoy this book, children that are interested in stories that feature intergenerational friendships and sharing of cultures will like this story. And the artwork is very calming too. It's very beautiful, and it's just a really great book. So the next book I will talk about is for the adults. So we have this book in our collection. It's called Spider-Woman's Granddaughters, Traditional Tales and Contemporary Writing by Native American Women. And it's basically an anthology of oral traditions and writings by Native American women. And it is compiled by Paula Gunn Allen. Now, Paula Gunn Allen, here's a little backstory about Paula Gunn Allen. She's a very influential person in the Native American writing community. She passed away about a decade ago, but she is really well known within the Native American writing community. So she was an award-winning Native American poet, literary critic, and scholar. She is of mixed Laguna, Sioux, Scottish, and Lebanese American heritage, and she helped establish a Native American literary presence in the United States with several anthologies, including this one. Now, she taught at several colleges and universities before joining the faculty at UC Berkeley, where she was a professor of Native American and ethnic studies, and she retired from UC Los Angeles in 1999, where she was a professor of English, creative writing, and American Indian studies. In the introduction to Spider-Woman's Granddaughters, Gunn Allen discusses her increasing awareness in her academic career that the writings of Native Americans, especially women, have been marginalized by the Western literary canon. She wanted to understand why it was that way and to remedy it. Further discussion in the introduction establishes that the Native stories that have been published consist of two main kinds: those that are simply recordings of an orally told story and those that are told on the page. Gunn Allen cracks down on this by saying that a work does not become literature because it is published, and that the nature of a literary work is to be public, and the public can be listeners, as is the case with the oral traditions of storytelling. This is what this anthology includes: those oral traditions that have been recorded and those stories that have been written down also. It includes themes and traditions that are important to the Native American storytelling way. Harmony, relationship, balance, and dignity are essential principles to the spiritual lives of Native Americans, and those are reflected in these stories as well. Now, this book, this anthology, is a collection of traditional tales, biographical writing, and contemporary short stories. Many are written by the most accomplished Native American women of the time this was published. This was published in 1989. Now, the Native American women of the time that are included in this anthology include Louise Edrich, Leslie Marmon Silko, Linda Hogan, Anna Lee Walters, Vicki Sears, and others. These stories in the anthology are about love and death, power and pain, power politics, and power of the sacred. After the introduction, the book is divided into three main parts: the warriors, the casualties, and the resistance. These sections include traditional tales that incorporate the theme of that section. The Warriors includes the most tales and stories, while the Casualties has only 5 tales included for that section. The Resistance section includes Deep Purple, which is written by Paula Gunn Allen, which addressed the issue of colonization in the women's movement. The reason I liked this anthology was because these stories embody what Gun Allen points out in the introduction, that Native American storytellers use tales to enlighten, entertain, educate, and to reveal the connection to the wisdom and experience of the tribal group. That is what is so unique about these stories and tales. The storytellers seldom write or speak as isolated individuals. It goes back to the whole. I've always liked listening to the oral storytelling of Native Americans and reading their traditional stories and tales. I really liked the Oneida traditional titled The Warrior Maiden in the Warrior section because the character of Elequipiso saves her tribe from the enemy by basically outsmarting them. She sacrifices herself in order to give her tribe a chance to survive against their enemy. Her tale has lived on, and her courage made it possible for her people to return to their village. Now, I think adult readers will like this book best because it includes many different stories and tales that attract readers from all genres. These tales speak about the whole of the community rather than just the individual, which is important to remember. If you like traditional tales and storytelling, this anthology is for you. Thank you for listening to my book talk for today. I hope the adults will check out this anthology of short stories and tales, and children will get to enjoy the children's tales as well. Thank you.